Oh, ho, ho, ho! A little spitfire tonight, aren't we? The adult griffin grabbed a random mug from a dizzied patron, backhanded him to the floor for the moment he protested, and took a big swig. Gulping, Gilda exhaled, wiping her beak, and leaned her back against the bar beside the pony. I've known you to take on trolls, harpy pirates, and God knows how many storm fronts to get what you need for your clients. But tossing around ogres 3 times your size in a bar crowded with drunken scallywags? Now that's just silly, Harmony. My name's not, the pony began, remembered who she was talking to, and deflatedly murmured, Whatever. Why so glum, kiddo? With a single serrated talon, Gilda raised her silver goggles up to her head crest. An amused pair of amber eyes winked down at the last pony. You're alive, aren't you? If you could call it that. Well, that's all that matters, isn't it? She suddenly leaned in, forcing the blinking pony's torso into an iron-wrought side hug. For you, that is. Heck, if I died, the golden mantle would just go to Stowe. But who would the mantle go to if you bit the oats? Whoop, sorry, old expression. Tough thing to kick. But hey, you get the idea. I think? Hehehe. Gilda pinched the brown filly's cheek, her claws nearly breaking the mare's skin. You're so adorable when you're all confused in the head. That's always been one of my guilty pleasures about your kind. Y'all could be so gosh darn cute at the wrong moments, especially when you're angry. She cleared her feathery throat. If Equestria hadn't gotten the burn, I think all ponies would have gone extinct by always shoving their hooves in their mouths. I just came here to do business, Gilda. And look where it got you. Seriously, Harmony, at this rate you'll be skinned and mounted in an exhibit by the next storm front. You've got to learn how to chill and know your role, girl. In the meantime, she murmured, nonchalantly turning her gaze to scan the ceiling. Her hug of the pony tightened suggestively. I should remind you how important it is that you've always got good old Gilda to cover your flank. This place is filled to the brim with nasty no-goods who would have all the cockamamie reasons to detest the existence of sweet, innocent pony like you. You know, I can't always barge in at the moments just like now, but you can still have the gang's protection at all other times. Gilda's voice oozed. Meanwhile, a prehensile lion's tail roped from behind the Pegasus and tightened mercilessly at the back of the mare's neck. If you're smart. The pony's scarlet eyes darted towards the living noose ensnaring her. Caught between the bar, Gilda's tail, Gilda's talon, and Gilda's cold shoulder, the pony wilted from deep inside herself. Unenthusiastically, she reached into her saddlebag and produced her pouch of silver, all the strips that she still had left from Gilliam's payment for the Phoenix fire. She cast a look upon her griffin friend, and the amber glint that returned was colder than an iceberg. Without a word, the Pegasus dropped the strips into Gilda's other talon, turning her head to erase the silver bars from her mental sight. The Golden Gang leader brightened immediately. Clever girl, she beamed, and then a shrill whistle, and another griffin around Gilda's height flapped serratedly over. Hey, Stowe, be true to your name and stow these away into the vault on board the Raptor, will ya? Stowe was a stone grain-feathered griffin whose beak resembled a perpetually grimacing mask. A scar ran over her left eye, and her jacket was laced with finger bones belonging to several questionable species. Taking the silver, she launched a glare past Gilda and hissed at the pony. You better not be holding out on us, blank flank, or I'll gut you in places you never knew you had. Stowe, shove off or shove it, Gilda snapped, kicking a lower talon hard into her second-in-command's gut. This is my good friend you're barking at, you overgrown cockatoo. I don't see why you waste your frickin' time. Stowe spat, gave the pony a lasting snarl, and stomped off. If you love the glue stick so much, boss, just marry it already. Yeah, and we'll mount the wedding cake with your gizzard, you loudmouth. Take a hike. Gilda frowned, then chuckled helplessly as she patted the pony's shoulder. Pfft, blank flank. Beats the heck out of me where that psychopath gets her insults. Shoot, she couldn't have gotten it from me. I had loads of fun hanging out with ponies back in the day. But you know that, Harmony. And you know that I'd never insult the hoofed pipsqueaks, even if they were friggin' lamos from time to time. But hey, that's the checks and balances, right? Right, the pony sighed, stretching her saddlebags wider over her unmarked brown coat in an absent-minded gesture of yesteryear. Whatever you say, Gilda. Hey, barkeep! Gilda raised a talon as she swiveled around toward the counter. 2 rum and coconuts, on the double. The pony droned. I don't drink. Kiss my tail feathers. Gilda stuck her tongue out. With me you will. If you're so concerned with my protection, the pony sneered at her, you'll let me pilot the Harmony sober. Fine, fine, you win. Who am I to argue, huh? Gilda snickered, rhythmically tapping her talon fingers against the bar while smirking at her friend. These are your last days, not mine. Guess you're entitled to live out your life the way you want to, huh? I guess. Well, better get it straight, girl. I mean, it's in your blood, right? She smirked and pointed. One of those things I always found quirky about ponies is that they constantly pigeonholed themselves into doing one particular thing in life. Seriously, I never understood your society, even when it was still standing. It was like a freaking caste system. Remind me, what were those tattoo thingies on your butts y'all got so bent out of shape over? The pony snorted. Cutie marks. Gilda pounded the counter with her fist and covered her cackling face until a tear or two shed from her squinting amber eyes. Woo! Oh wait, you're serious? Why wouldn't I be? You ponies actually bent your entire civilization around a social strata called cutie marks? I've heard some pretty sissy things back in my day, but that takes the cake. Heck, no wonder your kingdom frickin' exploded. 2 mugs were deposited in front of the griffin. Gilda gladly swooped one up, took a swig, belched, and smiled warmly. But not all of you were so namby-pamby. Why, a better part of my sprightly days were spent flying with the best of y'all. The Golden Gang leader exhaled in a sudden softness, choosing strategically to lower her pilot's goggles over her eyes. If it isn't the darndest thing that you're a Pegasus. 'Cause those are always my favorites, the winged ponies. While the unicorns were all sewing dresses and earth ponies shoving plows, it was the Pegasi who really showed Equestria a thing or two about being awesome. They burned paths in the sky that mark the mist of twilight even to this day. If you squint at the swirling ashes just right after a storm front's cleared, you can see their wing trails still there. Frickin' sky ponies. They would have made a good home in this upside-down life we call a waste. She took another guzzling sip, breathed, and squinted the pony's way. Maybe that's why you fought the Grim Reaper for as long as you have, eh, kiddo? Don't be silly, the pony murmured, then gave the griffin a postcard smile. It's because of all your expert protection. And don't you forget it. The Golden Gang leader pointed a talon, downed the last of her mug, belched, and clasped the second one. This time, Gilda lingered with the drink at the edge of her beak, her silver goggles fogging briefly in the den's hazy light. You were young, kid. Too dang young, if you ask me. But, heck, those are the cards fate dealt. I knew a Pegasus or two who would have done even better than you if they were in your place, who wouldn't have needed the protection, who could have done just fine without me. Her feathers ruffled as she gulped hard, this time at the ear. Just one. I remember just one Pegasus, come to think of it. The pony's brow withered as she breathed towards the floor. I remember her too, Gilda. It took several seconds of silence before she realized how identically frozen the both of them were. The haze settled between their cold bodies like mist in the twilight air outside. Clearing her throat, the pony lowered her goggles over moist eyes and stepped away from the bar. Well, thanks for everything. I've bothered Pitt enough. It's time that I headed out. She trotted off. For a moment there, she imagined she was in the clear. But then Gilda's voice called out, Hey, Harmony, before you walk out on the gang and I. The pony stopped in her hooves. She turned and glanced over her flank. Gilda smirked, her Avarian head cocked to the side. I thought I'd mention that Stowe, the girls, and I ran into a friend of yours recently. A friend? You do remember who you're talking to, right? Some toxic lung chipmunk named Bruce. Talks like there's marshmallows in his mouth. We did a little, business with him the other day. Did he mention that? The pony stared fixedly at her. She replied, Haven't heard anything of the sort. Yeah, well, this little scamp gets around. Not as much as you, of course. But when Stowe's scarred face freaked him out, he suddenly went on and on about some crazy nonsense. What kind of nonsense? Gilda sipped from her mug, gulped, then uttered, Something about green flame, plumes of it, shooting up in random places across the wastelands. From what I hear, the cred's really valuable. Like, you might as well have a leprechaun pea gold right into a jar for you. Ha! Another sip, then a raising of her feather crest. You wouldn't happen to have seen this sort of stuff in your travels, huh? Seems like something that'd be right up your alley. The Pegasus looked Gilda's way. Her goggles shielded the Griffin from seeing her eyes dart from the Gold Gang leader to this leather map on the bar on the counter and asked, I'll let you know if I hear anything, Gilda. She smiled briefly and waved a hoof. It's the least I could do for my best protector. Gilda saluted back. Dang straight, kiddo. Have a safe flight. And don't go picking fights with ogres, you hear? Right. The pony turned around, trotted out, and muttered under her breath. Ogres. The pony pulled the lever once, twice, thrice. Finally, in a deep hum, the signal lit up. The fresh flamestone burned prismatically into the 7 lenses as the artificial rainbow surged high into the twilight, 10 times brighter than before. It was several hours since her venture to the MODD. The pony had returned to the plateau for her regular lighting of the spectrum. But as she trotted back from the sight, breathing pantingly from the physical effort of forcing life into the machine, her expression waned into a wilting grimace. As amazingly bright as the well-paid-for effect was, it somehow seemed dimmer. Perhaps it was the creaking noise of the chains moored to the hovering harmony overhead. Perhaps it was the harsh flurry of snow that dipped surprisingly low for that moment of time between storm fronts. Perhaps it was the taste of blood that resurfaced in the Pegasus's bruised mouth. But something was distracting her, so that after 10 minutes of staring, she realized that her gaze was fixed on one color in the spectrum and one color only, the green band. She exhaled in a gust of frustration. The multiple mishaps of her brief visit to the MODD bled down through a curtain of numbness to pinprick her all over. She kicked at the stony earth, and a few clumps of powder splashed unexcitingly across a rusted metal barricade or two, mocking her lonely ire. The permeating silence of the abandoned plateau prophesied to her yet another fruitless night of guarding an unseen spotlight, so that she wondered if the only thing a rainbow dared to dance for was the creature that conjured the spectral band in the first place. Everything the pony struggled and suffered for, the strips and the flamestones and the lighting rig, all paled to a bone-white malaise, all except for one color. It was the one color that she suddenly refused to look at, the one color that she hated, because she knew beneath all her pathetically collapsible layers of skin that she was afraid of it. It's not worth it. The last pony spoke directly to herself, something she hadn't done in years. The green flame isn't worth going back there. She clutched the rifle to her chest in what briefly looked like an infantile hug before she rolled her scarlet eyes, slid her goggles down, and climbed lethargically up the guard tower where she knew she would sit for several hours, waiting for nothing. Long after, in the gently swaying haze of the Harmony's cabin, the Pegasus was lying on her hammock, chest first, her head swimming in the rhythmic lulls of Octavia's strings. Before her, bathed in golden lamplight, the pages of the Celestia's diary spread wide, their ivory surfaces lilting under mighty golden pen strokes of the goddess long gone. The last pony dutifully read and reread the same silkily described words as she had so many times before, committing the holy paragraphs to memory, turning them over in her mind, allowing the eloquent passages to sweep her away from the flurry and gray mist outside the airship's portholes. Halfway through the habitual read, a rough gust of turbulence struck the Harmony. The vessel harmlessly bucked for the briefest of seconds, and in the ensuing jolt Octavia's record momentarily skipped with an offensive scratching sound. It was enough to snap the filly out of her umpteenth perusal of the princess's journal, so that her eyes blinked and refocused squarely on one particular passage that suddenly stood out from the rest. It was an entry dated from halfway through the middle of the Third Age, describing the death of the last noble member of the Honeytail clan, an aristocratic family of unicorns whose great ancestors in several generations were loyalists to the Lunar Republic, having been given pardon by Princess Celestia following the banishment of Nightmare Moon. For several centuries, the Honeytail household had lived within the sacred protection of the celestial estate, barred off from the rest of the equestrian population, many of whom were descendants of brave soldiers who died wastefully at the hands of the Lunar Republic, and who wanted nothing more than to strike vengeance at the Honeytail clan for so much bad blood built up over the years. The Honeytails were satisfied to stay within the confines of Princess Celestia's domain, and on account of their fear and hesitance, they died out as a hemophiliac strain of inbreds, fading into nothingness with little more than a passive epithet from their forgiving queen in a journal that only one lone Pegasus would read after an apocalypse had long come and gone. The pony's scarlet eyes wandered across the ever-familiar bulkheads of the Harmony, across the windows stained with the repetitious cyclones of snow, like her countless days were repetitious, bouncing back and forth between scavenging jobs while dodging murderers and monsters and only randomly communing with a flying squirrel that leeched off her, a monkey that swindled her, and a griffin that drove an invisible knife into her heart and twisted it. Everything about her existence was like a flake of ash, lost in the twirling winds, disgusting itself with the faux self-importance of the steam-powered Zeppelin armed to the teeth with sacrilegious runestones. She was the last pony, and if this was living, she didn't do a very good job at it. The filly briefly remembered what it meant to take chances before chances took her, what it meant to go for the gold before succumbing to a life that settled for silver, what it meant to fight gravity long before her wings ever paid heed to her audacity. She never asked for Princess Celestia's protection before the cataclysm, and she sure as blazes didn't ask Gilda for it after. The young mare clasped the royal book closed. Bolting out of the hammock, she slapped the record player off, yanked the scroll from her workbench, and practically leapt into the cockpit seat. Unfurling the map, she clasped the compass in her teeth and charted the distance between her present location and the dead center of the equestrian wastelands, chiefly the coordinates 105, 32, 10. As soon as she was mentally prepared, the bearings in her head, she snapped the map scroll closed, spat the compass out, and sneered into the stuffy air. No pony lives forever. Isn't that right, Princess? She grasped her goggles, slid them over her eyes, and yanked hard on the levers, banking the Harmony port side and veering the craft swiftly southward. It was several dozen of hours later when the Harmony touched down, and when it had finished mooring, the landscape beneath it couldn't have been a ghostlier sight. Here, in the deepest valley of Equestria, the snow flurries blew savagely across the landscape like an ivory sandstorm. Black stalks of petrified glass shot forth from the scorched earth in obsidian daggers, making it a tough feat in and of itself for the Pegasus to land. Still, she descended bravely, and with a final flap of her wings the pony set hoof on the holy ground. As soon as she landed, a deep shudder left her, as if she was giving up the ghost in her shell to rejoin this deathly graveyard. She stared with chattering teeth, her snout bravely piercing the howling winds. Try as she might to eye the northern horizon, nothing could be seen beyond 5 meters distance. All she knew was that this was the last hilltop before the northern dip where Pitt's coordinates pointed her. Beyond the sloping terrain was foreboding obscurity, and it was about to brush bleeding elbows with the horrible shadows of her long-forsaken memories. With a strong gulp, the pony stood straight and tall, feeling the weight of her leather armor, saddlebags, rifle, runestone magazines, and 2 pairs of rune-capped jars. All of the defensive material somehow didn't make its next few trots any easier. She had her yoke of lanterns with her, but couldn't persuade herself to light them. Not yet. The filly knew that she wouldn't need them to find her way here. As the mare slowly trudged down the hilltop from the tethered Harmony, the flurrying wind spread the snow before her, revealing a pair of dried-up riverbeds converging before a series of multicolored houses, collapsed buildings with their thatched roofs long blown off. The skeletons of various oak trees lurched into view, and finally a deathly slumbering village bled forth from the gray expanse. One lone sign by a snow-laden path, bent at an odd angle, shuddered from the proximity of the Pegasus's treading hooves. The powdery ash that had collected on its surface fell off, revealing the lonesome words. Welcome to Ponyville, sanctum of earth ponies, population 1056.